This is Nick
And this is Leanne.
from Hemlock and Hyde, and this is what it's really like to work with your spouse.
So first I want to say that working with your spouse is definitely not for everyone, but we want to share our personal experience and some tips that might help you if you're thinking about working with your spouse or starting a company together.
You're probably wondering what the worst part about working together is, and what I will say is any kind of issue in your relationship, I feel, gets amplified when you have a business together. So if you struggle with a certain part of your relationship already, it's only going to get worse in this particular situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing I would say as far as like the worst part goes is if you can be sensitive to feedback, it's definitely going to be amplified in a business type scenario, because really the key to any business, whether it's with your spouse or with just a partner, is going to be communication, and you're going to have to communicate a lot and be really honest with each other. And so if you can be sensitive to that, it can be difficult and a little hard to take the feedback sometimes. So for me personally, the design process is my favorite part of what we do. So when I'm coming out with a new bag, I always am asking Nick for feedback, which can be incredibly helpful, but I would say that I am a bit more sensitive sometimes because, I put so much love and effort into that piece, but luckily Nick and I do have great communication skills. And I think part of it is really, we do divide up what we do, and so the design part is really the piece that I take on the most. And I just have really strong opinions on what I want things to look like, and how I want them to be put together and all sorts of things. And so that for me can definitely be a bit trickier conversation to navigate and not just ignore Nick's feedback on things. And because what he's saying is important and he's really looking out for our customer. And so I do have to be open to that.
For me, I'm the one that looks at all the numbers and the sales and our expenses. So when we have to maybe cut back a little bit on spending, or maybe our sales weren't what we expected, that can be hard to communicate, especially because we rely on this as our business and for our family. And the other part for me is because I'm less involved with physically making the product, I want to make sure that I'm always adding to our business in a way that's helpful for us.
And the best part for me is just being able to spend so much time together. While we're making stuff, a lot of times we're goofing around and making fun of each other and laughing a lot. Plus we get to spend a lot more time with our son, and just working on something that we both love together, and growing this business just as a whole has been insanely rewarding.
Obviously, I agree with Leanne on that. I think the other best part is kind of some of the freedoms we have, making our own schedule, getting up kind of when we want to, not to an alarm. That's me, not Leanne. And yeah, just some of the freedoms we have that we would never have with a regular job or if we weren't working together in our own business.
Yeah, the other little piece that I would add to that is luckily Nick likes to do all the stuff that I don't like to do, and I think vice versa. And so really I get to just do all the stuff that I love, and Nick gets to do all the stuff I don't love.
That's great. So that comes back to being open about communication. I think if we weren't open about dividing up what the business needs are, we'd be in trouble and we'd be really frustrated with that situation. So if you and your partner aren't clearly dividing what you do, that might be a really great place to start.
Yeah, besides just strong communication, I would say our number one tip would be to divide up tasks. Obviously, whoever enjoys the thing the most, it would make sense for them to do it, especially if they have the skills. But that dividing up the tasks so that it's clear whose roles and responsibilities are very clearly defined, the easier it's going to be to communicate on everything.
And if neither of you have the skill set you need for a particular task, that might mean that you have to outsource it or do some deep digging and learning to figure out how to do that. And making everything flow can be really relationship dependent. So like you guys have to figure out what's going to work best for your style, for who you are, and for your business.
Yeah, so for us, luckily, Nick is very big picture minded. He likes to think far out and kind of set big goals.
Decades out.
And I love the details. And so for us, that's honestly works in our benefit. So I really focus on the design details, you know, how does the postcard look? How does the business card look? How does each bag design come together? That sort of thing. And making sure that the quality is up to snuff on every single piece that goes out. And for Nick, you know, really setting those big goals for us, making sure that we're making smart business decisions to get us to those goals, and really focusing on the big picture for him is just the way that we kind of divide the bigger scope of our tasks.
And I highly encourage people to almost switch places sometimes to make sure that you're fully appreciating what the other person is doing. And I think that's a really key part of working together. Like everything that you do, you have to appreciate the other person, because you have to assume everyone's trying their best, and you have to assume that they have the best interest of the business at heart, and then you can start the conversation from there.
For example, when Nick quit his full-time job to come work with us full-time, or me full-time, he did a lot of like sitting, and I was like, "What's happening over there?" But I mean, I'm being completely honest. I know you were sitting and thinking about the business. I know that that's what was happening.
Yeah, it didn't look like a whole lot.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily look like you were doing much, but then of course, like, you know, a half hour later, he'd come to me and we would talk about like a business thought or decision or question, that sort of thing. So for me, it was a little tricky at first because what I do is so physically obvious that I'm getting work done.
Yeah, bag complete.
Yeah, exactly. Bag complete at the end of the day. Whereas what Nick is doing is a lot more within his head and like on the computer. It's a lot less visible that work is getting done. So I really had to like kind of take a step back and figure out like what exactly he's getting done and appreciate that, because honestly I have no desire to do some of the things that he does and thinks about until he can bring those ideas to me and then we can talk about them.
Yeah, I've got to fully filter my ideas before I bring them to you. But that's good. That's you have to learn to work together in the best way. Because if I have a crazy idea and I bring it to Leanne when I first think about it, she's going to put up a wall and she's going to be like, we're not talking about this. But if I slowly introduce something crazy over time and then talk about some of the benefits, then it might be something that makes sense and that we go forward with.
We definitely think about things very differently. I can be really pessimistic sometimes, and Nick can be like, I guess, overly optimistic sometimes.
Well, I'm an idealist, but I'm also very practical about how I apply steps to get to that ideal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you definitely are. So sometimes, like Nick said, if he came to me with a big crazy idea of like, what are you talking about? A great example of that, honestly, is how we changed our purchasing. So like how people buy bags from us. We used to be open every single day of the week and you could buy your bag whenever you wanted. And then all of a sudden we switched that to being, we're open just 1 week out of every month. And when Nick brought that idea to me, he's like, you're gonna hate this, but just listen. And slowly we figured it out, and it's been like one of the best changes we've made to our business. Yeah,
it's something that really helped us with production, with batching, and I think it just makes it really clear and for our customers like what to expect from us.
Definitely.
So if you haven't guessed it, communication is a huge factor, and we're going to keep saying it, communicate.
Yes.
How you communicate and your style of communication is really important, so you have to know yourself well enough to know how you want to be communicated to. Personally, like, I want brutal feedback. I want all the worst stuff that you can tell me so that I can fix it. Like, that's my goal, 100%. Now, that certainly wouldn't work for everybody, like, say, Leanne.
I do like honest feedback, but I usually want it presented to me in a less brutal way, I guess. I like to see facts to support why I'm getting a piece of feedback. So for me, that is probably one of the best ways. Plus, just know, like, for Nick to know, like, the best time to communicate with me. It's not always, like, when I'm working on a difficult bag.
Yeah, if you're starting a new design, or if you're making a design you haven't made in a while, or if you're at the sewing machine, it's not usually the best time to talk to you.
Exactly.
So another one of my roles in our business is to like continually push for new things and new ideas, and maybe even crazy things like maybe doing podcasts and videos like this. But not every crazy idea makes sense to do, so that's why we try to vet our ideas through each other to make sure that it's the right thing for both of us and the business and our family.
Definitely. And on the same, kind of speaking in that same vein, the same goes for designs. So, like, I always want to push to do a really crazy fun design, and I need Nick to kind of pull me back sometimes and think it, through a little bit differently.
So in talking about it, it really feels like this could be a longer segment and something that we turn into a series.
So we'll see you guys with more next week. Let us know in the comments if there is something in particular that you'd like us to cover in this topic.
Yeah, and always you can subscribe to our channel to get all the newest updates. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.